Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day today. It is January 20th, 2020, Martin Luther King Day here in the States. All the banks close on this day. Schools are let out, so my daughter's not in school. She's at a friend of hers' house. But I got the date right again. And this is last year, 2019. I went the whole year without screwing up the date. Because typically, ever since I was a kid, even when I used to write the date in January, February-ish, on my school papers or whatever, or homework assignments, I would do the previous year and have to, oh crap, it's this year or whatever, right? But last year was the first year I didn't screw it up the entire time when it came to dates. I was so proud of myself. So I knew I was like, this is going to be a good year this year if I can make it, right? And I made it 365 days and I got it right every time. So this year I am on task right now to in the same boat as I was last year. I'm not accidentally putting 2019 or saying, hey, it's January 20th, 2019 instead of 2020, that kind of thing. So, but I do believe, and I still believe, that 2020 is going to be a phenomenal year for the world. And it's also going to kick off, hands down, probably the greatest decade known to, historically known to the world. Because if I'm right about Maitreya, if I'm right about the masters coming back, and if I'm right about what humanity is capable of, when we start to listen to Maitreya's advice on TV and really take it to heart and see the problems of the world as they really are and start to tackle those problems, there's nothing humanity can't do. And this is just the beginning. So this decade is just the beginning of it. But I am putting all my hope in one basket that this 2020 is going to be the decade of all decades. I also think that, and I started thinking about this last year, about 2020, that there's not a lot of time left to start tackling some of these problems, especially the environmental problem, because of the invisible peril. Now, a lot of people are still caught up on whether or not global warming really exists, for instance, and that is your belief or whatever, but you can't deny that there isn't pollution in the world, so if you don't believe that global warming or climate change is really a problem, then by all means, go through life not thinking that, right? The masters would say it's 80% mankind, 20% natural causes, but you can't deny that there isn't pollution, water pollution, air pollution, that's making all of us sick. And we need to do something about it, or we are all going to perish. Now, the other thing is that globally, every country needs to work on this together. It's a global problem. It's not just a United States problem, which the United States is a big contributor, I'm not going to lie, but so is China, so is Canada, so is Europe, so is, Asia and other countries and South America, everybody is. So there's going to have to be a level of cooperation and trust among the nations in order to accomplish SOP, saving our planet. There's no other way to do it. And the only way to do that is to start to trust one another. Now, the masters will tell you that trust is key to peace. But the $60 million question is how do we create trust among nations that typically don't trust one another? I'm going to have to go back on this again, that it's only sharing the world's resources that are going to bring this about. Now, before you click off this channel and go to something more entertaining like, an ASMR video, if you think that sharing the world's resources is going to bring about communism or something evil like that, you might think communism is evil. Right? I don't really think it's evil, but anyway, go back and look historically at what happened after World War II, after Western Europe was in total shambles. The United States, under the inspiration of the then Secretary of State, George C. Marshall, who was one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during World War II, he was a general, he suggested that the United States take a little bit of the excesses that it has, a little food excess, little building products or whatever it happened to have, metal, that kind of thing, and just give it freely to Western Europe. And then once Western Europe starts working and getting their act together and getting, rebuilding their infrastructure and getting their peoples, back on their feet, Well, of course, because historically Europe has been a wealthy continent, that they would eventually be able to give back in payment some of their excesses. And I don't know exactly how long it was before they actually were able to do it, but it wasn't too long. And they paid back some of theirs, and of course the United States could, for a time kept giving excesses to Europe and so forth. Now, if you're a Christian, you've heard this saying before, because Jesus said it, and it's a very popular biblical passage, is a tree is known by its fruit, right? So, or what you sow, so shall you reap. If you plant a seed and you get an oak tree, well, then that was an acorn that you planted, right? If you planted a pine cone, in the ground, or you planted corn, you're not going to get an oak tree. You're going to get corn or a pine tree, depending upon what you're planting, right? So what the United States is planting now with their foreign policy is more and more instability, more and more war. It's not creating peace, and no matter what our politicians say about more military action in this part of the world or threatening this country over here is going to bring peace, it's never going to bring peace, because it's never brought peace. It's only going to bring more instability and more possibility of destruction and bloodshed and misery for everybody on both sides. But right after World War II, when the United States did give some of its excesses to Europe, the seed that was planted then, unfortunately we didn't do it for over many seasons, it was just one season, so to speak, but they planted a seed that not only changed and flourished, but not only changed Europe for the better and the United States for the better, because economically there was an economic boom, thus the term baby boomer, right? With all the babies that were born at that time, but they were born also because of the economic boom, families having stable lives and so forth. But it totally rejuvenated both America and Western Europe. But also long-term wise, over decades and decades and decades, just doing it just a little bit. Historically, what countries do the United States trust the most? The Western European nations. England, France, even Germany, which was one of our enemies, of course, during World War II, changed everything. To the point where they're very stable. Both economies are pretty stable. And it all came from the Marshall Plan. Now imagine if we did this same thing globally, where we did it in Africa and South America and some of the poorest nations in the world. Because according to the masters, every nation has some kind of excess. So it's not just giving them aid the way that we do today, or governments going and taking half the money out of your savings account and giving it to a stranger on the other side of the planet. It's not that at all. It is taking the excesses that a country does not need, and oftentimes, like in the United States, just goes to waste, and freely giving it to another country that needs it. And then as they start to build their infrastructure up, they have some excesses, whether it's minerals or oil or food or building products or something, that they can turn around and give back to the other country in payment. And I even thought about this, and I don't know if it'll be like this, but even thought about this in terms of Brazil, right, with the rainforest and how much oxygen it produces for the entire world, and how they're thinking they have to cut down more and more forests just to compete globally economically, right? Well, what if we were to give them those excesses that they need to help build their infrastructure the way that they were wanting, without having to cut down the rainforest, which would help to alleviate some of the asphyxiation that's going on in the atmosphere today by cutting down of the rainforest. So it could look a lot of different ways, because every country has some kind of value, and under the guidance of the masters and the United Nations, it'll eventually start to work out to where the principle of sharing will be a global, ongoing principle, really. And it will totally revolutionize and transform life on this planet. But imagine if every nation trusted one another the way that the United States and Britain trust one another, and so forth, which isn't perfect. I get it. It's not perfect, but it's sure a heck of a lot better than what we're seeing in Iran and North Korea, correct? But imagine if we trusted those nations, and those nations trusted us the same way that we trust the Western European nations. But we are going to have to, as a nation and as a global community, start to look at sharing. It is the very first step, and it's the only step that really hasn't been tried globally to bring about peace. But if you look at the track record of what happened just for a brief amount of time, it is hands down revolutionary and transforming. And that's why Maitreya will be advocating the need for sharing. We have to do it. There's no other way to bring about peace. And so we have to look at it like that. But time is not on our side anymore. And I think that as we start to go into 2020 and 2021 and 2022 and 23 and so forth, the sense of urgency is only going to get louder and louder and louder and louder till we actually do something. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we all breathe the same air. And if there is no more oxygen, well, then we're all going to be having a hard time. If we're all, pollution affects a Republican just like it affects a Democrat. And we have to take care of pollution. So again, if you don't believe in global warming or climate change or whatever, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. But you can't deny that there isn't water pollution out there or air pollution. Just take a look and look at it with your own eyes. And then look at how is it affecting everything. There's 7 billion people that aren't going anywhere. It's only going to get worse. We have to do something to sustain our environment or we're not going to be here. The next generation is not going to live a full generation. It's that crucial. So listening to those politicians who I think are totally out to lunch, and that's on both sides. It's not just Republicans and it's not just Trump. Trump is not the problem. He is the symptom of the problem. And this problem has been going on long before Trump ever took office. So he's not the problem. But we can't look to our governments to solve the problem. We have to look to each other to step up to make those needed changes. The good news is that the world teacher, the imam mahdi, the Kalki avatar, the Messiah, the fifth Buddha, Maitreya, and of course the Christ, and the world teacher is the same guy, and he is here speaking on TV, trying to wake us up to see the own problems for ourselves. So we not only solve the problem, but we won't end up coming back to the edge of the cliff again at some point, and that we can move on and really start to live the potential that we're living today. I really, really hope this helps, and I hope you have a good rest of your day and week and so forth, and I really do look forward to talking to you again. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.